I am transgender. Growing up, it was scary. I didn't have anyone to talk to. My family didn't understand. It's a struggle to be real. Society, for some reason, doesn't want people to be real. I've come across a lot of transgender children in the world, and I want to do everything in my power to make sure that they don't go through the things that I went through. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. It just matters, are you a good person? I want someone to know it's okay to be transgender. It's okay to discover that you're not transgender if you think you are. It's okay to be gender fluid. It's okay to be gender neutral. It's okay to be gender non-conforming. It's okay to be male. It's okay to be female. It's okay to be gay, straight, lesbian. It's okay. Just please be a good person. Be kind. Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode of Kelly's Quest. I know it's been a while since I've been on here. Unfortunately, I had a death in my family. I lost a sibling, and it kind of threw me for a bit of a loop, to be honest with you, because you see, well, a lot of you know this. My siblings and I, we are not this tight-knit, meshed, loving group of humans. As a matter of fact, I struggle to communicate with them. I have one sister that I managed to communicate with on and off. I have another sibling that I haven't spoken with in over a decade. And unfortunately, I have my sibling that passed away who I didn't get a chance to reconcile with. And that threw me for such a loop that I didn't really know how to move forward with the show, because I knew that the next thing I wanted to do was to have an episode about siblings so that people could understand what's going on in the world, so that they could see that you can still survive like I have, even if you have problems with your siblings. But there are siblings out there that are supportive. There are siblings out there that love one another, and there are siblings out there that are going to be allies even through thick and thin, even when you throw something as complicated and as unique as gender into it. And I'm fortunate enough today that I have two siblings here that are going to kind of share with the rest of you what it means to be caring, for lack of a better word, for each other, which is very hard for siblings, I think, because even if you're not battling over gender, you're battling with a sibling. So with that in mind, I really and truly want to thank Ethan and Katie for being here. Both of them have agreed to sit down. They're siblings. Ethan is a touch older from what I understand, Katie, but my guess is that you would win in an arm wrestling match.
No, every time. Yeah.
And I mean, so it all works out that way in the end. But thank you all so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. I think I want to start this conversation off with Ethan first, just to kind of give a story of what's the dynamics, because, you know, people always put stock in what they see with their eyes. And gender expression is a big part of what people think when they see another human being. What are you wearing? What are you presenting as? What kind of style are you sitting in? All of these different things. So I just want to kind of mesh out the relationship that you all have, how gender is involved with it, and just teach people in the audience what it's about. So Ethan, I think my question for you is, first of all, you're cisgender. In other words, you're comfortable with your gender. When the doctor said at birth, this baby has such and such genitals, and I want to say this baby is male, as you grew up, you're like, damn it, the doctor got it right. Lucky him.
Yep.
Now, as you grew up with your sibling, Katie, was there any experiences for you that made you realize that you have a sibling that possibly society might not quite understand as well as you do as a sibling?
Growing up, it wasn't as much. Initially, and like especially as we were younger, I think it was less immediately appreciative of the possibility that there was a gender aspect to it as much as just a sexuality aspect to it. That Katie came out of the closet as gay originally in high school, and as going farther down the path of discovering and identifying and appreciating exactly, really who Katie was, came out to explain that much more to the family and friends of exactly how Katie identified. That early on, because I think at that age especially, this was, to show my age, it was over 25 to 30 years ago, we're just getting into elementary school, and at that time there was no concept of, at least for myself, the differences and or possibilities of how somebody would identify, and so nothing ever stood out as possibly different in that way, but there were signs, or whatever you want to call them, that Katie wasn't, towing any kind of social norm line, or the fattest, thickest, lines that are out there right now that are generally have been boxing people in. That there were definitely plenty of instances where we feel like, I think the whole family would know, to say that Katie's on an alternative side, according to the social norms, and one of the classic kind of "how come I was the last one to know when I came out" scenario was how it worked. There was it was "I need you to sit down," and it was "oh great, here we go." I was like I know what this is now. I know what's coming, and it was very emotional and difficult for Katie to go through it all for us. But I think the whole family, my mother, my father, myself, we were all like, "Oh yeah, the whole time," and had always had some kind of an appreciation for that. And I think as far as the dynamic of our relationship in the world of gender or really anything, for myself, it's because the doctor got it right, or just because I'm also very stereotypically blonde-haired, blue-eyed, 6 feet, male, like Caucasian, like middle class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That things don't, like, there isn't a lot for me to generally in my personal life appreciate as difficult in the way that it would be for anyone that didn't fit the most prototypical mold of the most privileged potential person out there. That our dynamic of our relationship is significantly more educational when it comes to the world of gender and identity. That
now, can I interrupt for just a second? So about the education part of it, because this is something that I think that's the whole crux of this show, was 100% education, 100%. And I kind of think that education is a two-way street. There is the ability for a person to give information about themselves, but then there's the onus of the recipient of that information to go do studying on their own. And I feel like that's where a lot of times the ball is dropped in our world, is like, I can give you all the education that I can about who I am as a human being, but can you please, there's this fancy thing called Google, can you type into it and do a little bit of research on your own? And I'm curious, I'm going to come to you in just a second, Katie, because this is going to be directed pretty much towards you with what you're planning on doing in the future. But where did you go for your resources in your research on your own, rather than coming to Katie all the time? Because there's other siblings out there that I guarantee you that are like, I don't know where to look. What do I do? How did you go about finding this information?
I mean, you nailed it with Google. I'm also lucky enough to have access to Katie's Facebook page, which has links aplenty to all sorts of things that can keep you that much better educated about any of it. That for me, when Katie would let our family know, or let family and friends know that this is how these are pronouns that I would prefer to be known by, also would go that much farther to say these are other options that are out there for other people, that whether directly applied to Katie or anybody else, it was worth understanding, because I felt like because it was never any contention, or there was never any it wasn't a fear or anything learning these things, or allowing or witnessing Katie.
So you weren't afraid of what you might find?
No, not at all. And it was always great, but like knowing that as different from me as Katie would be in those regards, there's a million other people that are just as different from either of us, that I'm just as likely to run into in a professional or social situation at some other point. That it's easier, certainly for me, growing up and having access to Katie and to ask people, how do you identify if there's if that's the topic of conversation? What do you prefer? Just to know that there's other ways for us to talk to each other, and how to be that much better educated in the world of knowing that maybe that I could do a better job of helping somebody feel more comfortable by referring to them as they would prefer to be referred to.
It's amazing that one little simple thing of getting a pronoun the way the person wants it and deserves it. How much that's dignity. You're
Right.
showing that's an act of dignity. I'm respecting and dignifying that who you think you are is legitimate, and I agree with you. And that's, for me, the beauty of a pronoun. Pronouns are also beautiful because you own your pronouns. And no matter what the rest of the world says, those are your pronouns and you own them. And like for you said he, Caucasian male, cisgender, he. Katie, your story, is it on pronouns? Like for me, I went from he one day and I'm like, okay, I'm tired of hiding the world, I'm she. Is there a different story for you than mine on how the pronouns work?
Yeah, so I identify as non-binary. I identify as male and female, and I feel like there's a lot more in my gender even than those two things. As far as pronouns go, I use he and she interchangeably. I like when people mix it up. It's kind of hard to get my pronouns wrong unless you refuse to engage with it at all. What I don't like is when someone sort of picks one side and sticks with it because it makes them feel comfortable. Largely, my identity, I think if I had grown up, Ethan mentioned, when we were little, there wasn't a word for it that most people knew. Right. Some people out there knew the word transgender, but my parents didn't, we didn't. It wasn't, on the cover of Time magazine at that time. And had I grown up at a time when it was, I might very well just identify as male and use he, and I probably would have, been on puberty blockers and all of that from the start. But I didn't. And for me, the journey that I have come through is a huge part of my identity.
Absolutely.
And like Ethan said, I wasn't a stereotypical girl. I wasn't wearing dresses. I think Dad has a good story of me throwing a hell of a tantrum when I was maybe 3. When he put a dress on me, I got halfway down the hallway before I realized it and just lost my mind. So a doctor said, this is a girl, and then I didn't want to do almost any of the things that meant. And because I had short hair and I wore the clothes that I liked, I was always read as a boy. And so I spent the first 25 years of my life just trying to be a damn girl. Like, I didn't get the rule book. I don't know how to do this right. Nobody seems to think I'm a girl.
Wait, there's a rule book?
Ugh,
I transitioned without the rule book? No.
It just seemed like everybody else knew how to do it, and I didn't know how to do it,
Doggone it, Katie.
And
I think guys would like to get their hands on that rule book too.
yeah, right.
No.
But I was always read as a boy, even when I tried really hard to fit in. I was pushed out of the girls' room in I believe middle school by another girl. And I think that the amount of fighting I had to do just to own the identity I was assigned at birth and be allowed to exist looking the way I look as the identity I'm supposed to have, according to North Carolina and some other folks out there.
Tennessee.
I don't want to let go of that completely.
Okay.
And I also, I still go by Katie, which been my name the whole time. I could pick a male name. Most people read me as male. But as far as I'm concerned, this society wasn't built for me to be comfortable, and it's not my job to make other people comfortable. So
Thank you. Why should we be the only ones that are uncomfortable?
Right?
That's how I agree.
My parents named me Katie. It's always been my name. I don't see a need to change it. I don't believe that he or she fully captures my story and my journey and my identity. And I know it's harder, and I have gotten a lot of people tell me how hard it is to switch up pronouns, and I say, yep, but it's not as hard as being me. So keep
Well,
going.
that's
You're
it.
doing a great
That's
job.
it. Keep trying.
You know?
Keep trying. Don't say it's hard, I'm giving up.
Yeah.
It's hard, I'm going to keep trying.
And it is. You know, I recognize that. Pronouns are so incredibly deeply ingrained in our minds, and especially the older a person is, the less sort of neural plasticity. You know, you're set in your language.
Yep.
You're set in the ways that you speak. And the
Yes.
longer you've known someone, it's harder again to get used to new words.
Now, before we came on set, you were discussing how are kind of trying to change what you just discussed. Do you want to
Yeah.
share with people kind of this big scheme, idea, dream that you're working on? Because I find it fascinating, and I'm pulling for you big time with it, because I think it
Sure,
will
yeah.
happen.
I'm very excited. I'm working with an incredible, fabulous team of academics and researchers and practitioners and trans folks back in Oakland, California, where I live. We are kind of coming together to try to put together some materials to create more inclusive, gender inclusive early childhood educational environments. So we have presently two bites for book deals. One is a more academic sort of a publisher who is looking for, you know, what kinds of theory is this grounded in, what does the research show, all of that.
Right.
And one is a more on the ground for practitioners, for preschool teachers, for parents of young children, but largely people who work with young children. And I mean, you know, 0 to 7 or so. And I think a lot of people don't want to touch sexuality and gender before high school. And they'll say kids are too young, they're too young to know, they're too young to have these conversations.
But they're the same people that will say boys play baseball, girls skip rope or whatever. So they're the ones that are indoctrinating without
Yes.
even realizing it.
Every prince story is about gender and is about sexuality. And, you know, kids are learning these rules from the start. And there is research coming out. There's not a lot because there just aren't enough people kind of funding this research and pushing this stuff through. But there is research coming out that is telling us that most trans folks knew something. Even if they didn't have a word for it, they knew they were different when they were 2, 3, 4 years old.
Absolutely. And I think for me, when I noticed that difference was when society made me to conform to a role that was not mine, that I did not own that role. When they said, okay, let's line up for the bathroom, boys, you line up here, girls line up here, and they say, Kelly, you're in the wrong line. Or when I'm at a skating rink and it's an all-girl skate and I go out there and they make me leave. It's not, for me, it's not until that point when society says you got it wrong, did I ever start questioning what was going on. So to say that somebody doesn't know their identity is, for me personally, I find it offensive. I find it offensive to say that a kid that's in kindergarten doesn't know who they are. They might still want to be a horse, or they might want to be a banana at some point in their life, but they know if they want to be a boy horse or a boy banana or a girl horse, or neither. They understand that there's something to them. And it bothers me that I have people all the time say, how did you know so young? And I look at them all like, how did you know so young? And they're like, and you can see they can't answer that.
Yeah.
Because it's just who they are.
Right. Well, if you're told young, then you can answer that I was told when I was very young, and if it happened to work, then great. But you weren't also told that there was an option,
Exactly.
or that there could be that that it could be whatever you want. You know, that just to have that opportunity at young. That's how you get to say you knew, that you always knew, that whether it was because you were always being told, or at least you were given the freedom to appreciate the possibility of not being what you were told.
Yeah.
Now, is there sibling rivalry just because you're siblings?
Probably, yeah. I mean, the
So
competition.
what I'm getting at is
Yeah.
the natural stuff that siblings have anyway is
yeah.
still
yeah,
there. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't, because your gender is involved or is unique or anything like that, doesn't change the fact that there's a rivalry between most siblings. I wouldn't think.
No.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that like one or the other of us is isn't still just as adamantly interested in beating the other one at pool or darts or in your younger bike races to the bus stop or whatever it would happen to be. I definitely crashed my bicycle into a telephone pole, checking behind me to make sure that Katie was still losing, and then I lost. So
Wise
that's
move,
always
Katie.
been the case.
I'd always play the
it was-
long game.
I'm sure that was, I'm
You
sure
were
that
the
was
turtle.
very- yeah, that was entirely on purpose. But no, the traditional sibling rivalry. There's not. I don't think there's never been like a whole lot of like legitimate contention. But the want to beat the other and literally whatever we could potentially compete in is certainly always there.
I think we've been lucky in that there's never been any serious contention. There was standard sort of stuff. I was the younger one, so he couldn't be seen with me in a lot of scenarios. But at the same time, we enjoyed each other's company for the most part. Definitely did our wrestling and did our fighting over who got the big fight was usually who got the butt end of the dog in the car. Actually,
Yeah. If
Yeah.
we were a road trip, the dog would
Sit
be
in
in
the
the
middle.
middle, and it was like, who got the butt end
Yeah.
was typical. Yeah, that was.
Wait, so the dog had it better than you all on the long road
Yeah,
trip?
well, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the
Because
dog
she
was
was getting scratched from both sides.
spread
so,
out across
you know.
both of us. It was just a contention, and I think that was more for the sake of having something to fight about.
Yeah.
than it was.
Nice.
Than it was, that because if anything, we could never disagree on how much we love that dog. So,
The rest of it, the trip, just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
dog.
yeah. But if there was,
It was
a,
more
but if there
about,
was a game of
she
Boggle or
likes me more, I
Solitaire,
think,
yeah, if we were gonna play one of those road games of
yeah.
cribbage or something like that, then absolutely. In fact,
That's a great road game, by the way.
I've only played cribbage one time. Katie taught me. I won.
He refuses
Wait.
to play.
I've never played ever again,
So that you're like all-time champion
I'm
is why you'll
undefeated.
never play.
Undefeated, won't play
specifically against Katie.
That is sibling rivalry.
So
Come on.
It is.
it's gonna
I
be
let
the
him
case.
win.
That's
I
always
think-
going to be the case. You might have to teach
It was
me
his first
again.
time.
You could just hang your hat on the fact you're a good teacher.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
That what? And you're a
my
good learner
my
then.
students have a 100% winning record.
Yeah, there you go. Against you. Very benevolent.
So speaking of benevolent, when you, and this isn't speaking of benevolent, but it was just a good segue. So everybody knew before you knew, you said earlier. Now, when I was trying to work up the courage to let the world know about my authentic self, I tiptoed out to it, freaked out, and went back and hid and became hyper masculine. Then I would try to tiptoe out again to it and freak out. And I never mastered a way to tell people that I was transgender when I lived in Tennessee. So I went stealth. And stealth, for the people that don't know, means that I didn't let people, and maybe it's not people's business, but I didn't let people know that I was transgender. Like I would apply for a job, I wouldn't tell them, and I wouldn't do anything like that because I didn't know how to tell people. It was either out of fear, out of lack of educational resources on how to approach people, or just an unwillingness to take the risk. How did you work through the steps for yourself to let your family know? Did you know ahead of time that, I knew that my family was probably going to disown me when I told them. Did you have an inkling that your family was going to be okay ahead of time, or did you have fears like that?
I did. So what everybody knew before me was that I was gay. So I came out as gay when I was 15, and I shocked nobody except for myself, who was like, "How did you all know?"
Okay.
So my journey has been sort of winding, and my discovering who I am in my sexuality and in my gender has all been sort of intertwined. But I remember when I first learned how to write, I got a little journal, and I wrote one thing in it, and I wrote, "I want to be a boy." And I don't know if you remember this, but you found it, and you made fun of me, and I buried it somewhere in the basement. It's probably still there.
I don't remember that.
Well, you made fun of me for most things, because siblings, right?
Right, siblings.
It wasn't even about that. It was,
Yeah, an opportunity to make
I
fun
found
of a
your journal,
sibling.
and I'm going to make fun of you
Right.
for it,
Today I would do it if you had missed any punctuation or spelled things wrong.
which I'm
But-
sure I did, because I was 5, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember that, and I remember just feeling hot with shame at having someone read that, even just having written it down and looking at it myself. And I remember feeling shameful that that's not something you're supposed to do. I mean, I'm not supposed to feel that way. And it was definitely not a like, I want to be a boy because boys have more like fun toys. It was, I want to be a boy.
Yeah, it's in here. It's not because of any external gratification, that's for sure. Because wow, in the world would I have chosen to go through what I've gone through to get whatever.
Yeah. And I remember kind of keeping that inside. And then I sort of discovered my sexuality in high school and came out as gay and shocked nobody again. And I think I kind of realized like, oh, it's okay that I'm masculine because I'm a lesbian, and so lesbians are allowed to be butch, and that's like accepted. So now that I've come out as gay, I can like wear a suit. I wore a tux to prom, and I felt like this is all cool because I'm gay, and that's fine if you're gay. And that explains all that other stuff.
Yep.
And you know, I think I've had some great conversations with folks both older and younger than me in the LGBT community, and I think if I was younger and born at a time when transgender was more well known, I would just have been a boy and grown up to be a straight boy. If I was much older and had to fight as hard as some folks had to fight just to be butch lesbians,
Well, not the butch lesbian.
You're right.
I'm a femme lesbian.
But I might just be a butch lesbian and had stopped at that. But I came out at a time when being gay, I had a very supportive family. I had a very supportive community of friends. I grew up in liberal Massachusetts, which helped.
Did you know it was liberal?
I did, yeah. I was still scared, you know, because you hear stories of kids getting disowned, and there were two folks in my class in high school, including myself, who were out as gay. The other was a boy who was kicked out of his house. And so I was scared. I think in retrospect, I didn't have as much reason to be scared of my family as I was if I look at my family. But I was scared because of everything you hear out in the world.
Right.
I found out after I came out that my mom played on a lesbian softball team when we were little. Nobody told us that. Yeah. But my mom, so mom knew because I asked her when I was 7, I guess, if you can have a baby without there being a father involved. I was like, can we just get rid of that step? Because that seems unnecessary. But, so, you know, I came out as gay, and then I lived in that identity for a little while through college, and then started to feel like, you know what, that's not the whole thing. That's not everything for me. I have lots of lesbian friends, and they seem very comfortable in this identity, and I think for me there's something else going on too. And that's when I started to kind of test the waters with identifying. And I didn't call it trans at the time because I really felt like if I was going to call myself trans, I had to just go be a boy and only be a boy and stop,
Right.
you know, take hormones and have surgery and do all those things. And I didn't really know if there was a gray area for me to live in. And so I kind of built that gray area, and I built my supports coming out sort of strategically to people after having conversations about gender is a social construct. Hey, by the way.
Right, and fill them out
know,
ahead of time. I
sort
did
of
that up
finding
here.
my allies, and by the time I really came out as trans, I think my family wasn't surprised because I had talked about gender. I actually gave my dad the book Gender Outlaw to read, which is a great book.
It is.
Took me maybe a couple of weeks to get through. It took my dad several months because he would pick it up and read a paragraph and be like, I don't even know what just happened in my brain. Put it down and go think about it, chew on it for a while, and come back to it, you know, a week later after he'd sort of let that paragraph settle and then try again. But, you know, I'd planted enough seeds that most people that I am close to were not shocked.
Well, folks, that wraps up part 1 of the episode on siblings with Katie and Ethan We've had so much information given, and the episode has been so promising that I've decided that I'm going to extend it to 2 episodes. So Katie, Ethan, thank you all so much for being here, and folks out there, get ready for part 2. It will be coming out very soon. Thank you.